We just as a country have to face reality and realize that, the relationship with right and wrong, good versus evil, and fundamental beliefs should be honored. But we should also have the ability as a nation to be able to freely express what may challenge the next person. You don't have to disagree. And that's the whole thing about freedom of speech. We're not protecting the speech we agree with, we're protecting speech we don't.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It's Joe from the MiddleGround Mic. We've got a fantastic guest today, Evan Turk. That's how you say your last name, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Evan, I really appreciate you coming on here today. Especially, like we were talking beforehand, a lot of what you're doing it's key for what this country needs to move forward, especially with fighting for everybody's rights. And I appreciate you coming on here. Give everybody a little bit about who you are.
So you want me to tell your audience who I am, or do you want to bring it on and discuss it?
Give everybody just before we dive in, just a brief synopsis of yourself.
Okay, I'm one of those people they call lawyers, but I think of myself as a unique lawyer. I fight for people's freedom and First Amendment rights. I run a charity. Other than my law practice, I run a charity. I'm founder of a charity called the American Rights Alliance. It was founded to protect people from the injustice that's happening today, whether it be false or imprisonment for people who committed crimes that we don't even understand are crimes. We're trying to get people out of jail for being just political prisoners, to get rid of the extreme political polarization in the criminal justice system. If you don't like somebody, you shouldn't put that person in jail. But unfortunately, we're seeing that time and time again. We're trying to put common sense back into this American country that was founded on freedoms. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech. And this is the most valuable amendment because without the First Amendment, nothing else matters. We can't have free speech. We don't have anything else. We are an organization that fights every day diligently to keep people protected from government overreach, government tyranny, and oppression. We don't want people in this country to be scared to say something that would be punished, not because it's a crime, but because politics or those who are insensitive don't like it. We are fighting every day trying to get people out of jail who I can tell you things that are absurd, that are crazy, that aren't crimes, but people are facing significant jail sentences. We're trying to get pardons for people who really deserve it. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to make this country a better place for our children, my children, and for the world.
Yeah, yeah. We talked a little bit about that this earlier. Um, about obviously for the rights. One of the things when was doing looking up things, you push back a lot on digital tracking and financial blacklisting. And then so, I was looking that up, and according to Pew, I think they're pretty fair. 73% of Americans say Washington collects too much personal data. What do you think about that?
Well, gonna do a plug for I do a show on Real America's Voice, which is a weekly show on Saturdays at 4 o'clock. And we're going to be discovering, our audience is going to be discovering what's really going on. It's worse than you think. I mean, by far. And you have a ton of people that were connected to the president one way or another. Anyone that was labeled a MAGA extremist, which could be anybody, they've had their data breached. They've been spied on. I mean, a lot's going to come out, I hope. That's what our job is. But I couldn't agree with you more. It is really scary. If people knew what that number, what was really going on, I think the number would be closer to 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's I did an episode with he's a report, well, I guess reform reporter, current reporter, whatever. He does political and AI,
Mhm.
kind of like it's kind of like what his gig is. He echoed very, he a little bit more of a leftist person, but he echoed the same exact thing you just said.
Yeah.
He said a lot of this technology that they're putting out there, the people that are making it and are gearing it towards kids and certain things like that. He goes, they wouldn't even let their own children or families use.
It's,
And
see,
it's scary.
I don't want I don't want to create false narratives or put people at unrest over conspiracy theories. But the things that have come across my table, there's this thing called Arctic frost. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think the listening audience should look into it because I don't want to create false narratives. But apparently, under the Biden administration, back in they probed anyone that was connected to the FBI that was connected to probed so many people that were connected to President Trump, wiretaps, phone taps, things like you would never believe that could happen in this country. Again, I'm only it's called Arctic Frost, and I'm at the beginning of it, so I don't want to spread false narratives or make myself look like I'm crazy if there's some information that is out there that is misleading. I do not want to put fear in our listening audience's minds because I have half truths because that's just as dangerous. But at the same
Yeah.
time, if we are correct, and I've gotten good sources to say that we are. I mean, it's really scary. It's scary that these judges could sign off. I mean, if you look at how many people were spied upon, congressmen, I remember supporting senators, Senator Hawley as an example, as prime example, and there's I think 2 dozen more that were spied upon by the Biden administration, and that's out there. That's what we do now. I mean, when we spy on our own people, I mean, this is worse than McCarthyism. This is worse than, everybody is a communist. So therefore, we have the right to do heinous things. I mean, we have a history as a country of doing these things, and unfortunately, you think as time goes on, we wouldn't do it, and things will be back to sanity and back to normal. But this is the new normal, and it scares me that you can't trust the government. Who can you trust? And if you can't trust this country, where are you going to go? And
Yeah,
we still we still are a land of the free. I mean, there's no other country I would rather live in, but it's a country we have to fight for because if we don't, it's not a country that, especially in the last few years, that have borders or really becomes a country anymore. I mean, at what point do we just give up? And I'm not giving up. I owe it to my family. I owe it to my kids. I owe it to the promises that were given to me as a child when Reagan was in office. And I looked, because I'm 48 years old. I looked at basically when he spoke, he was like almost like a second father figure. I mean, it
yeah.
was. I keep saying this. Rocky Four came out. I mean, there was so much pride in being an American, and we were like badass. Part of my language. We were unapologetic. We just led the world, and we conquered. And now everything we do, we have to apologize because there's people in the media, in politics, and in society that want to guilt us for exceptionalism. It's crazy.
Yeah, there is hope out there. And so, talking about like per se, like thinking of like some of these agendas that are out there. I've seen a Yale poll recently, and I've really started to kind of dig into it because I'm like, man, I'm like, is this really true? Gen Z, 18 years old to 21 years old, are 12 points more conservative than they are liberal. And so Yale dug into it a little bit more. And obviously it's because of, the COVID and the Biden policy. But, that aside, I mean, just based on what, you see in almost any media, right? Whether you would look at Fox and, you just think people that age, you don't think of conservative. You think of something completely different. So the fact that there's so many more conservatives there, and then something else when it dug deeper down into it, males of that group from 18 to 21 are going to church more than women. And that's the complete opposite of like the last 60, 70 years, where mom had to always quote unquote drag dad to church. Now it's the men leading the charge going back to church.
What do you think that is? Because I could have some theories about that.
I think it's, to me, it's not having like that. When you had Ronald Reagan, you had the Hulk Hogan's. I mean, even to a degree, Bill Clinton made people feel good about themselves. You know what I mean? Like he was, I'm America, we're America. And the George Bush, senior, and we don't have that anymore. There's really, I mean, I'm not talking like outside of President Trump. He's a little bit more rough around the edges sometimes, right? Those guys are kind of like that grandpa that gave you the jelly beans per se, like Reagan, and just made you feel good about yourself for waking up today. And we don't have that as a country right now. And I think that, as being a guy myself, right? And I'm not trying to speak for all men, but for me, like, having something like that in your life makes you go, okay, all right, I've got a purpose. I'm an American. I've got to take care of my, we don't have that. And I feel like people are lost.
I have a different theory. It just when you said it, it just popped to my mind. There's two things that I'm going to go back one thought process and then go back to it because I've been meaning to say it, but I didn't want to be rude and interrupt you. The Yale study, perhaps it's because of organizations that Charlie Kirk started, Turning Point USA, where you have your safe spot, right? And what do they call them in these colleges? We need our safe zones. Well, that was kids who really didn't want to drink the Kool-Aid and think that there's more than two genders, or that God is dead and that there's no point of having a religion. I mean, there's something that you need to align yourself with that's bigger than just yourself. All of a sudden, you have all of these Turning Point USA campuses, organizations coming into campuses, and you have Charlie Kirk, you have Ben Shapiro, you have all these people that are speaking out and saying, yes, I agree with that. That's one thing. And getting back to why men go to church more than women, there's a theory, completely just thought about it when you said it, is that men like to have fun women and men like to have women that they marry. They're going to marry the woman they meet at the church. They're going to hang out with the women that they meet on the college campus.
So it's very heartwarming, right? So, I'm a Christian myself. My son, well, we're going to a little bit different church now, but he was the head of the youth group at the last church. He plays instruments, and I've got a 7-year-old who he's autistic, but he really he loves it. And I mean, you say, hey, it's Sunday. He's like, all right, boom, man. He's got his shoes, clothes on, ready to go to church before anybody else in the house. And he embraces it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it made me feel a little bit bad because when I grew up Catholic. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I remember growing Catholic and they'd be like, oh, it's time to go to church. And I'd be like, oh God, I don't want to go there.
But
And
I know you're the host, and you're the one that asks questions. But what, you're no longer Catholic?
it was, I think the best way to put it is, I don't want to say like I fell out of love with God because I believe in God 1000%, still read the Bible, all that. But I fell out of line where the church to me to a degree was, I won't say like rules, right? But they were trying to say that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, this is the result. But when you look at the scripture, it's not implying any of that. And that's when I kind of started to go, that doesn't make sense to me. Why are you telling me this? But God is saying something completely different. At least just in, I'm not a theologist, but just, looking at it with my own eyes, seeing it. And then as I grew up, you and I, we're not that far. We've grown up from the analog to the digital world, right? We developed in it. And so then, like they're like, back then, back in early, the 90s, there was no such thing as like if you believed in anything but creationism, you were just a terrible person, you're awful. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, what's wrong with, as we learn about certain things about science, right? Like we find there's, I don't know, like some planet that's right there we haven't seen in front of our faces. God created the heavens and the earth. He created the heavens. That means everything out there he made too. And that's okay. If we're all creating his image, that scientists that figured out how to at some point go faster than the speed of light. Yeah, God made him. The Bible doesn't say you can't do any of these things. The Bible doesn't say you can't leave the planet. Like, why are we treating all this stuff like it's taboo? And it didn't, like, just reading the Bible, it didn't add up for me. And so that's when I kind of went more non-denominational. My dad being of a German background, my dad was Catholic, but like a lot of part of my other family were Lutheran. And I'm like, it's a branch, like because Lutherans, that broke away from the Catholicism, and I was like, I want something for me. Like when I go to church, it's got to be about the Bible. It's got to be about what is the meaning behind that, not what the church thinks I should do. And I think that's where Catholicism got lost.
Yeah, I just think, it's funny because I get these things on social media. I was talking to my girlfriend about this, and she's Jewish now. She's raised Catholic, so it's a big problem in her universe because she's has this you know dilemma about being Catholic or Jewish. So we always have these conversations. And one of the things that I get on social media, because these phones, they listen to you, and they get all these
Oh,
things
yeah.
about Catholicism and about Christianity, and it's Lutheranism. It was founded by Martin Luther. King, what is it? King Henry VIII founded. What is it? The
Protestants.
right, and Jesus was the one that founded Catholicism. So that's the Catholic argument. And it's like, from an argument, like just because I'm a lawyer, I'm like, hey, if I was Christian, I think I would
You
follow
know
the
what?
one
Well,
that
I
created.
mean, Jesus was Jewish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, and and for me, it was just like at least the church that I had came up in. I don't know about all Catholic churches, but it was the Bible was there. It was the center of it, but
Mhm.
their beliefs as a church to sometimes seem to be more paramount than the lessons that were being taught in the Bible. And that's where I kind of was like, and it didn't like things just didn't register the more I learned about the world and how things work. I was like,
Yeah.
well, this doesn't add up. And but now the newer God, what's his name? Not Pope Benedict. That was our last pope. The current pope we have. I'm drawing blank on his name. I still
Yeah.
follow the
The
Pope,
American Pope.
obviously.
Just call him the American
Yeah,
Pope because you
the
get to
American Pope. Yeah, he's definitely a lot more modern, right? Like he talks about like certain things that like, hey, yeah, this is a real thing. Like he's not so stuck back in the day, right? But until the church adopts more of that mentality, it's going to chase its own flock away. Like that's why that on outside, obviously outside of the scandals, and the church was definitely very guilty of that. But that aside, that's a lot of why I know people just drifted away from it.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I think you're right. I think that it's not for me to judge your relationship with God. It's for me to judge my relationship to God, right? And my relationship is what matters the most. I just, I've grown up Jewish. I just really never studied Christianity, but it's really interesting about Christian traditions and the catechism and, how all the religion, at least in the Catholic religion, changed over time and it's evolved a little bit. And I just find it really intriguing that how people have their relationship with God. And it's not, like I said, it's not for me to judge. And it's,
oh yeah,
people will die for what they believe in, and they can believe in completely different opposite things. It's just what matters the most, I think, is the fundamental preachings of your religion is peace, love thy neighbor, respect, family. If you do all those things, you're in heaven on earth right now, right? And the happiest I've ever been is when I'm with my family and my kids are doing wonderful. And the saddest I am is when they're struggling. And I mean, it's the religious doctrine. I mean, it's family and it's belief in something that's more powerful than your own self. Your whatever your own personal priorities are, or whatever you think will get you happy. You learn that best when you see people who are born with nothing tend to be happier than people who are born with silver spoons in their mouth. Suicide rates are exponentially higher for those who are born to the 1% of society. I mean, they were born with everything, but they weren't born with the ability to grow, to evolve, and to you know, make a difference in their own life so that they could create value. And I think religion can help you do that, and be true to your faith and true to God and follow the wisdom of all religions, all yeah, I don't want to say legitimate religions, who am I to judge, but religions that, I feel are found out the foundation is peace, love, and family. I mean, if you have those three things in your family, in your religion, then you could find happiness and you could find God. And it's not for me to tell you how to feel. It's just for me to feel the way I feel with my own religion and feel enlightened. And that's why people donate to this charity because they have their own relationship to God and they know what's right and they know what's wrong. And they see people that are struggling. I have, for example, we have this woman. I don't know if you follow the Tina Peters case, but here's this woman, Tina Peters is, she's, I think, 76 years old. She's a
oh Jesus,
supervisor of elections in Colorado, and she was told to erase the data in the voting machines because they had to do an upgrade. But by doing that, she would break the federal law because you're erasing voter information. So she went to a whistleblower and basically reported and tried to do everything she can to stop it. And you know what happened to her? She's in jail for an 8-year sentence. 8 years. So we do
wow,
get articles written from the charity. We've done some TV hits, things of that nature. And the donations that come in to help this person, I find that they're more religious people than anything. And letters that say Jesus this, Jesus that. And I said, you know what? God bless them, right? And the most incredible letters are not the ones that have the $1,000, the $10,000 checks. Don't get me wrong. I love those because that pays the bills. That pays for a lot more things than Our expenses are exceptionally high in order, the cost of freedom is not cheap. But sometimes we get $10, $100, $50, smaller denominations, but the letters that come with it. And they almost like apologize. And a lot of times they don't even give their information. They'll put cash or whatever they can. They say, I wish I could put more, but I'm giving you everything. I'm not going to have a meal tonight. I would rather have this than sitting on my conscience. Thank you, Mr. Chick, or thank you, American Rights Alliance. Even if it's $20, $10, $50, that money means everything to me because now I have to pay it forward. The letters that come with mean everything. And it's their relationship with God. And I know that their relationship is pure because they're doing it for the right reasons. And it's not for me to judge. But at the same time, if we as a society have that basic foundation, whether you're Catholic, you're Protestant, you're Mormon, you're Jewish, whatever you are, if your fundamental belief is the core belief in doing good for society, I mean, who are we to judge? All I care about is just a generation of good people that believe in God. Because if you don't believe in God, I feel like you're lost. Not that, I have some people close to my family that are atheists and they're great people too. But I feel sorry for them because I feel like they're lost in the sense of, they know what's right, they know what's wrong because they have it here in their heart, but they don't have the ability to express why they feel that way. And I feel like your relationship with God, along with your religion, can make a significant difference. And I think it's worth getting back to our roots. And I think as society has evolved, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem with bipolarism of this political world. Just like we've lost or we forgot about God. I mean, things that we do. What happens is if you give an inch, sometimes in philosophy, it's because you don't want to be intolerant. So you give an inch, and the other person takes a mile, and that
Yeah, and
inch
then
that
how do you balance it?
body on tolerance is getting taken by somebody who wants nothing but intolerance back. So we just as a country have to face reality and realize that, the relationship with right and wrong, good versus evil, and fundamental beliefs should be honored. But we should also have the ability as a nation to be able to freely express what may challenge the next person. You don't have to disagree. And that's the whole thing about freedom of speech. We're not protecting the speech we agree with. We're protecting speech we don't.
Right. Yes, and that's so important. Well, you talk about that. So obviously one of the big hot button things that you've covered and just in general is obviously January 6th. And what really I don't know, do you know who Stephen A. Smith is? He's a
Of
sports
course.
reporter, right?
ESPN now he may be
Yeah.
trying to be the next Democratic president, and if that's the case, if he's running for office, I wouldn't be so scared
Yeah,
because
he's
I don't agree with him. I used to hate him. As hate is a strong word. I used to disagree with him and his attitude and his lack of charisma when he was an analyst on ESPN. But when he started going on Bill Maher and everything else, I'm like, I don't agree with him, but I agree with the fact that I can understand where he's coming from.
and he's principled.
Yes.
He's a principled individual. But
Yeah.
what really you were 6th when, because it was as soon after President Trump was elected, it was like all of a sudden all this information about everything just starts spilling out to the public, right?
Yeah.
If Kamala would have won, would have never got released. But
Yeah.
what
People wouldn't have been pardoned. They would have been in jail, rotten and forgotten.
yeah, he talked a lot about the I think there was 4 or 5, however many informants in there from the FBI, and
Mhm.
then umpteen people that were I don't know if they were working for them or linked to them.
Yeah.
And I had heard about the informants, but I didn't realize about how big that web really was because really opened my eyes to January 6th because I used to go, well, I wish, the president would have came out and said something sooner. I don't blame him for what happened, but I really wish he would have came out and been like, hey, let's put a kibosh to this guys. But I mean, it's here and there, but then you learn more about it and you're like, wow, the FBI was in the crowd. That's scary. And then I watched the whole speech that the president gave, and I'm like, he wasn't inciting violence at all. He said, we're going to primary them. We're going to go after them and primary them. He never once said, go kill anybody, and it was so twisted.
Yeah. No, we have the COO of our charity. His name is Trennis Evans, and he was in that situation. He was never planning on going in the Capitol building. He had a megaphone and he had some Fireball whiskey with him, and he walked around and saw people walking in to the Capitol building, they were not necessarily just going through broken windows. They were going through the front door. And when they went in there, they thought it was a civil protest. And he had a megaphone and saying, please, this is not, respect. This is the Capitol building. Peacefully walk through. People are taking pictures with police officers. This is not, an insurrection. And, may not necessarily agree. I may have, I don't want to say I would not have done that. I mean, put yourself in the situation at that particular moment with your particular emotions. Just like, any fist fight you've ever gotten into, sometimes you have that part of you, the rage that will act first and logic will hit second. But I don't think I would have. But I don't disagree with others that thought they were doing something that was anything but a peaceful protest. Okay. And there were bad people. There are bad people in everything,
Yes, everywhere.
So, with that being said, the demonizing of those people, and then you have to understand the frustration. You have COVID in a lot of people, including myself, know that deep in their soul, they were being lied to about this disease. The people were treated unfairly. You couldn't go to church, but you could protest. And they took somebody who unfortunately lost his life, whether it was the person that should be the spokesperson for civil unrest, probably not the smartest person with George Floyd, but I can understand why people got upset. And a lot had to do with COVID. A lot had to do with the fact that all freedom was being taken away. So you have a society that was trapped literally in their house for months upon months. And you say, you can't go to church, but you could go to a George Floyd protest. You can't go here, but you can go there. If you live in Florida like I do, you had a lot more freedom than in other states, like in blue states. You had Michigan, you had New York. I mean, it was just chaos throughout.
Well,
And
yeah,
you
it was rough
everything
here.
because you were told there was a lab in Wuhan where this disease came out, where they were testing that disease. You were being lied to because they were saying, oh, they're coming from a wet market. I'm sorry, wet market. The likelihood, but you see the media talking about this, talking about it like
Yes.
it's even a possibility. And then you see these vaccines. There aren't vaccines because as a child, I remember getting vaccines for chickenpox, or not chickenpox, for polio. You don't get polio if you got the vaccine. Now they have the chickenpox vaccine. You don't get chickenpox, but you get COVID with the COVID vaccine. So you question, why am I taking this? It came out so quickly. You have all of this stuff. You have now an election that for a lot of people was stolen. Now, again, I do not want to use your platform to come up with conspiracy theories. I've seen a lot. I have my own philosophy, my belief. I'm sure you do, and I'm sure the listening audience has it as well. But at the end of the day, you have all of these things. And you feel like your country is stolen from you. So you walk through not to cause violence, but to just protest and say, enough's enough. This is not the country that I remember. That was the point. If you ask 99% of those protesters, they're idiots in everything. I mean, everywhere you go, there are idiots. But then you find out through, in my case, Trennis, who lived it, he went to jail for it. He would have, completely reported, and he would have walked into the police station. He had a lawyer. He knew it was going to come up. But rather than that, they used all these taxpayer dollars. They put guns to his family's head in broad daylight. I think there was like 8 FBI agents, laser beams on his kids' foreheads. Like this guy was a terrorist, like a major threat. When they could have just called him and said, Trez, I know you're not going to like this, but you need to, come to the police station and you have to turn yourself in. He wasn't going to leave. He could have left before. He didn't leave. He had to go solitary confinement, lost everything, his ability to make a living because he's now considered a felon. And you see this happening in your own country and you're being lied to just from the same thing about the Wuhan lab in the wet markets. You're being lied to. And then you see this guy, Fauci, who had on the board of one of those companies, I believe, I don't remember, it's Pfizer, I think, that he had every reason to do what he did because financially he made more money than anybody. And you had Pfizer, you had the two other companies that were producing all these vaccines and Moderna and Johnson and Johnson, and they made more money from this vaccine than you could spend in 100 lifetimes, right? 1,000 lifetimes. And you ask yourself, oh, and by the way, if millions of people died from them, and so a lot of people died from it, we don't talk about that. But if millions and millions, if not billions of people died, they had complete immunity. You
Yeah,
question
they did.
this. It is asinine. Yet we criminalize, demonize the people who stood up. Again, you should not have went into the Capitol building. But we also hear the rumors. Whether the rumors, I just do not want to spread. I'm a lawyer. I don't want to spread untruths. You have someone like Nancy Pelosi, who I heard said no to bringing the Capitol Police there. You had Trump that tried to get the Capitol Police there, but the person who had the power to do that was Nancy Pelosi. She was at the House of Representative, and she was the Speaker of the House. That was her responsibility. So I understand. Do you not think possibly, not to go in a conspiracy theory, but like there was some of this going on? Probably,
Yeah, yeah. I
right?
mean, it's they. I mean, if you're trying to re-seize power, if you want to call it that, and you're on the opposite side, no matter per se which political thing was, and you've seen an opportunity to per se go, well, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Even if you know it's going to be a problem, you have plausible deniability. Who's going to say what was going on inside of your head? Nobody outside of you. And now you can be like, well, I didn't know they were going to take over the Capitol building. Why would I need the police? Even though completely knowing that it's a really crazy environment at the moment, and that's, yeah, I wholeheartedly believe. And then when you got somebody like Stephen A. Smith, who's a devout opposition to the president, coming out going, hey, this reeks of pardon my French, but it reeks of bullshit,
Yeah.
and when he's saying it, yeah, it really, when he said it, I'm not gonna lie, it made my head like, I was watching YouTube, it made my head like whip around. I was like, hold on, Stephen A. Smith is in it. And then I thought it was, you're talking about COVID. What was it? A week or two after President Trump won, just back in November, where the CIA came out and goes, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, we're kind of pretty sure that COVID came from Wuhan lab. And now, mind you, hadn't been said the last several years, but as
Yeah.
soon as there's going to be somebody else in power, yeah, by the way, this is what was really happening. And it's like, so you guys knew this all along. And that part bugs me. Like, it's like, just tell us how it is.
You're being lied to, but like the problem is that whether you call it the deep state or people who are unelected officials that have more power than you could imagine, or when Biden was in office, the person who was programming the auto pen to sign it, whatever, you're being lied to. At some point, your IQ doesn't have to be that high to understand you're being lied to. But the problem is, and this is what we as an organization about free speech is, you don't have to agree with me, but I should have the ability to question what's going on and take another thing. So you talk about election fraud, and we're unraveling a lot of things on election fraud, things that make zero sense. And again, I don't want to spread false rumors. I don't want to do anything other than speak nothing but the truth as much as I can. Okay. We're never perfect, but you question election fraud. I mean, if you look at it, more black people voted for Biden than they ever did for Obama. You had people with these mail-in ballots just at a time because of COVID. But the second you question it, you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're actually now considered a domestic terrorist because it's an inconvenient truth. I mean, if it was no election fraud whatsoever, why is the media so against you question it? Like with such disdain. And then just remember, we forgot that we were lied to on a couple of things right before elections. So we were lied to about the Joe Biden's laptop, right? Hunter Biden's laptop. You talk about election interference. That's election interference because it's not about the popular vote. It's about the electoral college. I mean, they didn't. The needle was so small that you had to get to who would have won, and we've been through this. Bush v. Gore. I mean, a lot of these things. I mean, these elections can get extremely close, and you take away the ability to question the Hunter Biden laptop and say, hey, there's a lot of damaging things on this laptop. And The New York Post was the one that reported it. They've been around since 18 something. It wasn't coming from some right wing, lunatic, dream news outlet that has a history of speaking craziness. It was a mainstream newspaper, okay? Facebook wouldn't allow you to post that. Any other major news outlet, the New York Times, is against it. Why? Who is in control of that? If it's not a deep state, who? Okay?
Mark Zuckerberg came out and said it.
Yeah, I know. And then afterwards, years go by or some time, oh, yeah, well, it's not an issue. We'll admit that that wasn't really exactly what happened. Same thing about Russia collusion. Yet Hillary Clinton sponsored a dossier to basically destroy her candidate or her opponent. Now we know that her opponent was spied on. They had FISA warrants, which let's think about this. FISA came out after 9/11 so that we could protect America from domestic terrorists. You have someone who's running for president for the United States of America that's being spied on. Again, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. But it did. But we don't care about it. We don't make it a big scene. You have I keep saying Hunter Biden, Joe Biden with Ukraine. He said when he was the vice president of the United States that he even cursed, or in Biden language, I'll be damned. They fired the guy. That's what he said. He made the guy that was going to implicate him be fired, and he admitted. Yet they tried to successfully, depending on how you look at it, impeach President Trump for doing something that was within the realm of his job. He wasn't doing anything. Nobody reasonable could explain to me what the actual crime was. But then you had almost half of Congress say, impeach the man. Slippery slope. So all of these things built up to January 6th. It wasn't just an isolated event. And you have to understand why people protested. I mean, it wasn't an insurrection. But the same thing, we just changed the language so that we can justify the action. Just like somebody coming into this country, they're called aliens for all of time. They're called aliens. Someone who's from a foreign country here, who's not supposed to be here, they're called illegal aliens. The word illegal is there because it's a crime, whether it's a civil or criminal, depends on whether you're there for amnesty or you're there for without that, right? But now we changed it. And so what do we change that term for? We changed it to, what do we change it? Undocumented workers. Undocumented workers. And people said, you know what? That's not good enough. So during the Biden administration, they said they're coming here because they need amnesty, because in the middle America, Central America, global warming, which is not called global warming because we don't know if it's global warming, so they call it climate change now. So climate change is changing all of this stuff, and they can't produce crops, so they need to come here. They can't go anywhere else, just here. But they need to come here, and they're migrants. So people who are doing evil stuff, bringing people over the border, sexual trafficking, kidnapping, modern day slavery, coming over the border, they're now labeled as migrants. That sounds so much nicer, because then when you can debate, say, look, I am not going to punish a migrant, but they're not migrants, and they're mostly males, and they're mostly in their 20s. Why? We can't question that. And that's the freedom of speech that we lost. No sense of common sense, no sense of saying, we disagree with this, because look what will happen. If you disagree with January 6th, you'll go to jail. People have. There are people that have not been there. The leader of the Proud Boys, wasn't even there. And he got, what's his name? Daniel something with a T. He got 20 something years for a crime that nobody knows he committed or didn't commit. We also showed that you can't get an honest, fair trial in this country, because what they will do is they'll put you in front of not your peers. They'll put you in DC where they want to hang you, because everyone in DC, 90%, give or take, are Democrats. You can't get a fair trial if you're a Republican in a place that it doesn't matter. I mean, you can make up a crime, have no evidence whatsoever, and 95% of the time you'll get convicted in DC. That's a statistic. That's what it is. But the government has more financial means than you could possibly imagine. And if they want to put you in jail, they will. If they don't put you in jail, they'll bankrupt you, because they'll put your life into a rural, and they'll say to you, it's okay. Just tell us somebody. tell us. It doesn't matter if it's the truth. I mean, again, I'm not creating false narratives. These are the things that I'm seeing. It's okay. You don't have to. Do you know something on the president? Do you know something here? Do you know something here? All we need to do is have two people. We could have a conspiracy. This is not America anymore. It's not America
Wow.
that we grew up in, believe in. It's just not, and it could be. We just
What?
have to get rid of the system. And the answer is not necessarily Donald Trump or Republican. The answer is unity as a nation and to have the same values. I mean, that's why I think the extreme sides are taking over because the people who have the power, whoever those people are, want chaos. I mean, rather than talking what's going on in this country, all we're talking about is men who are dressed up as women swimming for you, Penn, and breaking every single record. I mean, I care about that. I think that is disgusting. But
It
we have a
is.
lot more things that are more important that affect a lot more people than that. One of them is the fear of going to jail for a ridiculous amount of time for a crime that you didn't commit, but they called it a crime. Another thing is to see my children have to suffer because they don't have fair opportunities anymore because they don't fit a quota. To say that equity is taking place of equality, which means basically, as we discussed before the filming of the show, that if you want equity, then you have 5'4" white guys in the NBA. It will be the most boring sport. You put the best of the best. They're doing that in the medical world. They're doing that even against Trump and his power. These universities, they're still doing it. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Equity is the mother of all exclusion because what you're doing is you're lowering the standards for everybody. And that's not how we evolve as a society. That's how we devolve. That's how we lose our exceptionalism as a nation because all the things that make us great are our ability to say, you know what, no matter what color of my skin, no matter what religion, no matter what my height is, I still can make it here. And why are people still going here versus anywhere else? Because they still have that. But it's like a light that's getting darker and darker and darker. And it's all of a sudden, we're not going to have our exceptionalism anymore. We're just not.
No,
I'm fight it.
no, and while you're talking about that, it made me think, some of the points that I had pulled up is, nonviolent defendants from the January 6 cases received near roughly double the average sentence of similar federal cases related to, that is just that part is just crazy, I mean, because justice, the whole idea of is to deter chaos and stay independent from politics. That's the whole quote unquote idea, right? But from your perspective, obviously, because
Mhm.
you got a wealth of knowledge, where do we draw that line? Because obviously, people got to understand that that line moves to me, anyways, based on the issue and the situation. But where is that? You've kind of talked about it, but like, where is that line that people just may not be seeing?
Well, the first thing that we need, I don't necessarily call it fake news. It's a great term, but objective news. We need objective news back. We need to have news that is not going to be edited to say your point. Perfect example is when Trump was talking and he said, there are good people here, there are good people there. I'm going to misquote him. My apologies. But what he was saying was that there are good people, whether you're on this side of the argument or you're on the other argument. We have to remember that. But they misquoted him in saying that basically he's a racist and a skinhead, and he was calling people who are Nazis or neo Nazis as good people. And when you have a press that is accepting to that kind of bullshit, pardon my language, but you have a press that's accepting to that, and they could say it with a straight face. We don't have a free press. That's not a free press. A free press is somebody who should be objective with what they're saying and not have to, sensationalize it to get an agenda taken. And doing what I do as a charity, it's funny because everyone says we support you, we support freedom of speech, but you cannot use our name for this or that because we fear that basically we will be blacklisted. And that's what's
It's a
happening.
legitimate fear. It's a legitimate fear.
I mean,
I've I
there are,
I've I have not experienced that myself per se, but the fear part you talk about, I forgot who it was, but they were saying that, especially when Joe Biden was in office, people at Fox faced a lot of pressure, and they were getting a lot of inquiries into their lives.
Hmm.
That was never really talked about publicly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you had heard anything about that.
Yeah. I mean, think about this one. It's crazy. It blows my mind. You have Justice Roberts gets somebody tries to kill him, right? And the sentencing on that is 7 years. Okay. Earlier on this episode, I was discussing our client, Tina Peters, nonviolent criminal, 76-year-old woman. I shouldn't say criminal because it's not a nonviolent woman, 76 years old, given 8 years. It's a life sentence. Okay. And in a female prison, it's not like male prison because they don't have as much diversity in female prison. So she's there with some serious offenders. Okay. Her life is pure hell for a crime that she didn't even have an idea that she committed because they just called it one. You could try to kill a Supreme Court justice and have 7 years. So you have people who just assassinated Charlie Kirk. What do you think? What is the basis of that? They think that they're heroes, right?
In their heads,
Yeah.
and that's
And
just
and you have a media that reports people like what the Tonight Show with
Jimmy Kimmel.
Kimmel. Yeah, I was gonna say the Jimmy, but there's two Jimmys. Jimmy Kimmel. It was disgusting what he said and
It
what
was
people
1,000%.
and people look at it and isolate with what the words he said, but it was not what he said. It was just defending the opposite side and providing that there was another side to it. Just like the guy who assassinated the healthcare executive CEO, all the other side cared about is how good looking he is, right? And they said, well, they villainize the criminal, I mean, the innocent, and they give all this praise to the assassin. I mean, if you have nothing going for you in your life, suicidal thoughts, whatever it is, I mean, you could be rewarded as a hero nowadays and looked upon by half of society as somebody who did vigilante justice, but it was still justice. And if you take a poll, I don't know what the statistics are, but I've seen it a bunch of times, so I know I'm right about the numbers are exceptionally high. But there's a lot of people who think that it's okay to kill people nowadays, especially the younger, if you disagree and you think that their speech is violent. Who determines what violent speech is? Well, the courts used to be the mediator of that. I mean, there are certain speeches you can't say. You can't scream fire in a movie theater. You just can't do that. But to say other things, you should have the freedom. And again, Peterson, what's his first name? Jordan Peterson. He said it best. It's like, it's okay that you can tell me how I should not be able to say this because it's offensive. But it's not okay if I tell you that I'm offended by not having the ability to say what I believe in. At some point, we have to have an honest conversation and disagree all you might, all day long. But we don't resort to violence over disagreements. We don't take away somebody's viewpoint, and we don't mislead the public because you do not like the other side. I mean, Charlie Kirk. I knew Charlie Kirk. I had dinner with Charlie Kirk in 2018. And this is the most brilliant man one of the most brilliant individuals I've ever met. We had dinner just by chance. I was at the right place at the right time. Nobody knew who he was. We were with this other guy. He played for the Denver Broncos. Everyone was sitting around him. I got the chance to talk to Charlie Kirk. And just put yourself back. This is 2018. Turning Point USA was not nearly as big as it is today. Still big. And the next thing I know, he says, we need your ideas on our charity. And the next thing I know, I was on the board, the advisory council for Turning Point USA. And he would call me on the phone and talk to me and say, I need your opinion on this. I need your opinion. Every time I gave him some legal strategy or legal idea, me speaking to other lawyers who are brilliant minds, I sometimes really got the deer in the headlights look. They wouldn't understand it. They'd say, it makes sense. No, he understood it. He understood. Brilliant guy. But that's not what I'm really bringing him up about. What I'm really raising his name for is what did he do other than believe in Jesus Christ and follow Jesus Christ's mission, philosophy? How does following Jesus, I'm not even Christian, but how does following Jesus Christ make you a bad person? There's not one thing he did. So let's talk about how the public misled his voice. They said he's, doesn't like transgender. No, he just was speaking his viewpoint from his philosophy, from what he thought Jesus Christ and the principles, but he could back it up with hard facts, and evidence. Two,
Yes. Yes. Say
what
it
else?
louder for them.
I know. What else did he do wrong? All right. Well, they misquoted him because they love to misquote. They said Martin Luther King. Well, Martin Luther King, from what I understand, he was a great man. He created peace by nonviolence. He didn't practice violence. And for years, his mission and his memory was respected until people like Farrakhan said, or before that, they had, what's his name? Malcolm X. Malcolm X said,
Yes.
no, we're not going to do that. That's not going to get us anywhere. But you had Martin Luther King, and he changed everything because timing and his message, it was right on point. But what he did behind doors, closed doors, he allowed women to get abused. I was not behind those rooms, so I don't want to spread rumors, but this is the stuff that is pretty well known and out there. I think he committed infidelity. Again, don't want to be wrong, don't want to spread rumors, but I think that's true too. So Charlie brought that up. But the media doesn't say that. What they said was that he despised or he ridiculed Martin Luther King. False narrative. He never said that. But that doesn't matter anymore. It's just close enough to resemblance of some sort of truth, 1% of truth. Take the words, rearrange it however you want, spread it out there as it's gospel, right? Those are the things that inspired this sick, savage individual to take away this life. Why? What are you accomplishing? But the fact that these people on the left couldn't just say, we adamantly are against this assassination. They never said that. What they said was everything I said, but with a but. We didn't agree with what he said. They said it in reverse. We didn't agree with what he said and what he believed in, but we don't agree with the fact that he was assassinated. They justified it. They gave an inch. They gave a reason why it's okay. So people don't necessarily understand because every time you use the word but or any other word to imply but justifies the problem. And here this guy lost his life. He's 31 years old. Brilliant life. A brilliant man. I mean, to this day, I was looking on my phone just the other day, all the texts that he sent me. It was like just him seeking information from me. And he was a lot younger than me. And yet I learned so much more from him. And this is the world we're living in. This is why I'm fighting the fight every day because I can't stand it. I can't stand the villainizing of people who are God-fearing individuals that are Americans that put their lives on the line. Soldiers, warriors, police officers, firefighters. When Obama came in office, we had such an opportunity. We could prove as a nation that you can be black to be the president of the United States. He did it twice. It wasn't a fluke. But where did we
Right.
go from there? That was the time we should have had peace. We could have said, you know what? Nobody thought this would happen. Chris Rock didn't in his stand up. He said, never, ever, ever. And never would there be in his stand up, never would there be a black vice president. Because you know what? Because some black guy will shoot the president and the vice president will become the black president. There will never be that in our lives. We saw the first vice president female. I mean, we have ways to go, but we're headed in the right direction. The problem is we have the media. We have all of this. You're not American. You're African American. You're Asian American. You're straight. You're gay. You're this. You're that. Just be
Yes.
American. Just be American. How about
Well, no, like when you talk about that, and that leads me to especially with Charlie Kirk, right? I interviewed Pastor Jackson. Gosh, I don't know. I don't want to butcher his last name. Lamer. He's on the White House Faith Council.
Mhm.
Great, 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 great guy. And I had already had the interview with him scheduled. And then, you know, he was, his friend of Charlie Kirk's, and his rep, and I said, hey, if he's got to, cancel this or whatever, totally get it, right? This, and no, he said, he goes, I can't back down. He goes, I have to do the right thing. He goes, if I back down, they're silencing me. And I believe he ran for U.S. Senate in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Sheridian Church. I mean, great guy. I mean, just authentic. I mean, just a great guy. But I mean, what you just said, it really resonated with that. And my wife, she's, I'll say, like, I don't know, my wife doesn't really have a political affiliation. I mean, she's a fan of mine. She jokes, she's like, she does. She works from home, but she'll have all my episodes on, just like on another screen sometimes.
That's the
And,
good.
but yeah, but, she was like, I really started watching some Charlie Kirk stuff after after he died. And she's like, I don't agree with him on everything. And she's a little, my wife's conservative, but the abortion thing she kind of gets a little blurry with. But she was like, why would anybody want to shoot this man? She was like, he's a good man. She's like, he's a good, genuine person.
He was a brilliant man as well. I mean, there were things like perfect example is when yeah, I don't know why this happened, but things happened. We're sitting down in Texas. It was a women's event. I'm sitting there behind the stage. I don't know how blessed I am to have these opportunities in my life. They're just statistically, I just don't know how it has happened, but it does. So I'm sitting there behind the stage with Charlie, looking at the stage. It was a women's event. He's like, look how far we've come from just last year, Evan. And I said, the issue is that everybody here looks like you and I in the female version, younger, but female version, younger than me. They're all white women. I mean, as a Republican Party, not a Republican organization, as a conservative organization and as a conservative movement, we need to capture diversity. And next thing I know, Candace Owens is hired. And then I get a call, and I mean, I'm not a big Candace fan anymore because being Jewish and
Oh yeah, she's
pro-Israel, I just think that she's disgusting in that realm. Okay, I just don't need to go further, but I think if you read the letter Dennis Prager wrote about her, because they were very close at one time, I think it says it better than anyone else could. But I also said, you're trying to raise money, and you always have these annual events at in West Palm Beach. It's when they did the during the Christmas holidays, they had their annual events there, and they would do the gala right at the convention center. Well, Mar-a-Lago is 3 miles away. So I said, you should do it at Mar-a-Lago. So the next thing I know, they're doing it at Mar-a-Lago. Next thing I know, I'm invited and I'm sitting next to Candace Owens. Candace Owens got her first day and her first introduction to Turning Point USA. So not only did this guy listen to me, but he actually took action and did it and let me know that my voice counted. And he didn't take credit for things. He empowered others. So this is the Charlie I knew personally. And I wasn't that close to him, but every year, every time there was an event, when I saw him, he remembered my name and he remembered thousands of others and made them feel like the most important person in the room. Here's a guy that's 17 years younger than me, than I am. And I can learn from him. And if this country had more Charlie Kirks in this world, we wouldn't have the problems we have now. And there would be a lot more happy people in this world. I think the real problem is that you have people who are believe in something and they believe in a country worth fighting for, and they find happiness by providing to others. And then there are people out there that are just absolutely miserable and they want to blame everyone else for everything and take the world down with.
yeah, no, 1,000%. I mean, it was really hard for me to process. I didn't know, obviously, I didn't know Charlie Kirk, but
Mhm.
the process of it, because I was just sitting there and I'm like, man, I'm like, him and I don't, we're not like obviously the same, but kind of what I started the show for, right, is to find a balance, right? Like, because you got to be able to look at somebody who you don't agree with and be like, hey, man, you want a beer, right? Per se, like you got to be able to do that. And he was trying to establish that, that's what he was trying to get people back to. And like I guess it hit. I don't know if it hit the wrong way, the right way, I don't know how to word it, right? But it hit. And it literally, my boss, you know, um, where I work currently,
Right.
he was like, he goes, Joe, he goes, my kid woke, he has a 2-year-old daughter. I told me at 45, a 2-year-old, you're a better man than me. But I couldn't do it. But he goes, I woke up, it was a 1 or 2. He goes, I went back to sleep. He goes, it was just replaying in my head and replaying in my head and replaying. And I was like, me too. I was like, all I did because I always watched a lot of his stuff and, and it was like, hey, chaos at, whatever. I forget what the school was written off the top of my head, you know. And so I'm like, okay, well, I hit play. And then all of a sudden it just plays like that whole scene. And I'm like, you know, it was just a school shooting is never okay, right? But you're not seeing it live and nobody's recording that, right? So when you see something like that, it hits home.
Yeah. And when it happened, I was in DC at the time, and I was with somebody who was actually going back to the White House. And she told me something's happening because somebody called that would never have called her. And we didn't think anything of it. And the next thing I know, we saw the video. So you knew if you actually see the video, which you can't unsee, unfortunately. It's just you realize when you watch these movies, it does no justice to how reality hits. And I just will never forget to the day I die what that awful video looked like. The only saving grace, the only piece is that I know two things. I know one that I'm as confident as I could ever be that he didn't suffer, and two, if there is a God above, which I believe there is, and if there's a pathway to heaven, that guy didn't stop anywhere. He went straight there. I mean, there was not an
Oh
ounce of
yeah.
that. I mean, again, I wasn't close with him. I wouldn't call him up on the phone and say, "Hey, it's Evan. Hey, what's going on, Charlie?" But he did call me. He did seek advice, and every time I did see him, he would always walk up to me, shake my hand, say, "Evan, how you doing?" and know something about me. It was almost like, you know, if there was a Jesus that was God's son, this guy came as close to Jesus as possible. I mean, this guy just is pure, and and there's part of me that says that, you know what, he's in a much better place, and there's going to be a lot of good that will come out of this horrific situation. But what kills me is that there are people that were mocking his death and saying it's acceptable. I mean, I don't care if it's my worst. I mean, granted, if it was Hitler, I'd be fine with it. But somebody who didn't or wasn't responsible for hundreds of million or millions and millions of lives, you know, somebody who just had a different philosophy than I did or do. I mean, take AOC or somebody in that caliber. I can't stand her. I think she's a piece of dreck. I mean, I think she's just doesn't have a brain. I mean, I could tell you how many things, but that's not my point. But I wouldn't be happy if she got killed. I mean, I would
No.
cry. I mean, not cry with tears, but I would cry like a 48-year-old man in that situation would cry and feel horrible that she lost her life, or Bernie Sanders or Gavin Newsom or even this Mandavi mayor of New York. I mean, I think they're despicable people, but at the same time, a life's valuable. And it's not my place to take it or to appreciate or celebrate their demise.
Right. No, and it's and nobody should. And if you should, if not you person, but if someone does, it's they're just it's like why do you even like communicate with people, right? Like it's hard to even describe human beings like that.
I know it's sadistic. It's where, but it only gets worse. And this time of society reminds me of World War II. Like growing up, I thought that this can never happen again. Like, what's the chances of you had all these disgusting leaders that all like teamed up and worked together and did just horrific things, and you had the rest of society look the other way? I mean, during the Holocaust, I mean, there was understanding that I have that, things that I've been told that the Americans knew that something was happening. And they said, please, FDR, just bomb the train tracks, stop this from happening. And you didn't. Neighbors, or I mean, I recently got to go to the Czech Republic, and we went to Terezin, which is one of these interesting, I don't think in a good way, in a negative way, but interesting. It was not only a camp for the Holocaust, but it was also a prison for a prison of war, and it was also where the person who assassinated Archduke Ferdinand during the First World War had lived until his death. And there was so much history behind here. But what's also crazy about this town in the Czech Republic was that there was a whole city around it. So they're burning bodies. I mean, we saw the crematorium. I mean, and people just say, nothing? No. It's like you can't pretend it didn't happen. And after World War II or in the Holocaust, what they ended up doing was taking the neighbors of those concentration camps and bringing them into the concentration camps because they were like fed up. But now you can't even in a lot of schools. Thank God we have a governor in Florida that says no, you have to teach the Holocaust and you have to spend a week. And there are some schools that are not following that. Like the depravity of this world, like that was one of the most horrific things. But we're now forgetting it, or saying that it didn't happen, or downplaying it. Because the biggest saying is never forget. Because if you
Right.
forget, it will happen again. And all these crazy leaders, all these crazy things happening all at once. I said, this will never happen. Thank God it will only happen once and we could learn. But I'm questioning that right now. I'm thinking this country, not this country is still great. The world that we're living is getting worse every day. And we're being lied to by globalists, elitists, and a world that we don't recognize and common sense that is not so common anymore. It's a depravity in a belief of God, I think, has a lot to do with it because if you take God out of the equation, you're able to do anything because you don't believe in anything. And it's a sick, sick place that we're living in if we don't put common sense back into everything that we do and just be honest, not your subjective truth, but the objective one. I mean, to pretend that there's more than two genders when we know that there's two chromosomes, an X and a Y, 50.2% of the population have two X's and the rest have 50, X and Y. I mean, it's just common sense. You create the lies. I think Goebbels, Hitler said during the war, the bigger the lie and the more you repeat it, the more they will follow it. That's what's happening. And we love the lie, we hate the truth. And those who speak the truth are ridiculed and demonized and put behind bars. And those who don't speak the truth that create the false narratives, there's no consequence. And we're talking before the show about Pocahontas. I mean, why does the president call Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas? Because she lied. She said she was Native American. I mean, and
Right.
there's no consequence. You have a president, Joe Biden, who lied and said that he was graduated at the top of the class. He did all this stuff when he never did. He plagiarized. I mean, this is the people that we have as the leaders. I mean, this is the people like Chris Rock said it best when Marion Barry was was confirmed as mayor after he was, I think he was in prison for being a crackhead. And you can't work at McDonald's, but you can be mayor. I mean, this is the society that we're living in. And, that's why I fight my fight. That's why one of the main reasons I created this charity was not, not for me to do anything other than do my part. And I am blessed every day because there are people that follow what we're doing and they do their part. And, I'm going to plug myself selfishly. You could follow us on AmericanRightsAlliance.org, or we have a show on Real America's Voice, which is a Saturday show at 4 o'clock every week. We highlight the cases that we're spending our donors' money on to get people out of jail and to seek justice, to get freedom. And this guy, James Bordier, is going to be on our show this upcoming Saturday. And he's the first asylum seeker from Canada. And he was the one that orchestrated the trucker protests. And, they're seeking 12 years behind bars for peacefully protesting. And if you don't
Yeah, and
think that
that's
can happen here, we have it happen here. The week before, we just had a guy that was in Michigan, in your state. He was protesting. He was doing a count of the votes, and the mail-in ballots had all these irregularities. The seals were tampered with, and he questioned it. And the guy in charge said, "Do not question it." And then he went out in the hallway because he lost his mind. And he said, the guy's name is Joe. He said, "We should hang Joe." And now they're trying to put him in jail as if that was a terroristic threat instead of more than an emotional outburst. When his emotions subsided, he was back in and they allowed him to continue his volunteer position. He has a family of a wife and two kids. You could go to jail and bankrupt him if worst, the best case scenario, just bankrupt him. I mean, that's the country we're living in right now. I mean, it's just suppression
and we're
of
s-
youth.
and we're supposed to be a country against debtor prison, and that's essentially putting you in one.
Yeah, we're a country based on amazing ideals. The ideology of this country is great. What we stand for is amazing. What the soldiers lost their lives on for every single war and every single thing that we've done, coming back to this, going back to the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. I mean, I don't know really the War of 1812 too much about it, but I'm sure there were some valid points in War of 1812, Great War, World War II, Vietnam. Went into a war for what seems to be false pretenses, but soldiers lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of Americans for what? Because they're American. And
Right.
now we're forgetting all of that. We're allowing people who never did anything for this country to come in without any reason, without any documentation. For what? For what? So that we can vote for one political party and keep that party in power. I mean, I'm not trying to spread that rumor, but it's I'm entitled to an opinion as American that speaks for First Amendment rights, that is my freedom of speech to say that. I don't understand it. How else can you justify millions and millions of people undocumented in this country?
You know, you're not wrong at all. You know, we'll do as we wind down here, we'll do a quick it's kind of like what I like to do is a it's like something I've been doing a little bit recently is like a lightning round, right? It's just like a couple questions, one word answers from you. It's based on what we've already kind of discussed.
Only one word? Some word.
Well, or yeah. So
Lawyer, we charge by
right,
the hour, so we don't use one word. We use plenty of words, a plethora of words, adjectives, synonyms, and analogies. But okay, I'll try.
January 6th, justice or overreach,
Overreach,
asset protection, loophole or lifeline,
lifeline,
social media in the courtroom, fair game or invasion,
invasion. But I could argue both ways. It just depends on my client.
government data tracking, safety or surveillance,
Surveillance,
the middle ground. Is that a reality or a fantasy?
fantasy.
Some days I feel that way. You know, that's what I'm fighting for.
Me too. Just
Yeah. Sorry if you hear my dog having a sneezing fit in the background. I don't know if she know what she
no,
just did.
no. But I'm happy that your dog's participating on the show. We should have
But
all of.
my two dogs. I had three. You know, one went the my wife calls it the Rainbow Bridge to the kid. But yeah, I got two of them. They're both rescues. You know, we got them as puppies, but they were rescues. And man, greatest dogs on the planet. I mean, they
Well,
follow me everywhere.
because I have the greatest. It's actually my girlfriend's dog. She yellow lab, and if I ever had to say either she goes or I go, I will be packing my bags.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's my wife joked with me about that once. She goes, "Yeah, I know if something ever happens, the dogs are yours."
Yeah,
You know, that's if I leave, my dogs are like at the window, like, "Where are you going, and why are you going without me?"
yeah,
My one's a German Shepherd. God, I'm drawing a blank on the mix. He's essentially a brindle, but when I come home, he grabs his bone, puts it in his mouth, walks up to me, and starts essentially trying to talk to me. He's like, "Rrr."
yeah. Yeah, I mean, dogs are. If I had to come back and I couldn't be a person, it would be a dog. It would be
Oh yeah,
unconditional love. I could walk in here, have a bad day, have a tired, stressed, this or that, and the energy she gives me, the love she gives me, and at night she sleeps in the bed. And if I'm cold, the first thing I grab is not the blanket, as I grab. She's a three-legged yellow lab, and she got hit by a car when she was like a puppy, and a rescue. And so her back leg is kind of like a pogo stick. And man, she's a blessing for us. She's the happiest dog, and it's proof that, if you follow a dog's life, you could find happiness in anything. And all they do is have unconditional love. And sometimes not rightfully so for their master or their owner, but it doesn't matter to them. They don't judge, they just love.
oh, I know. Dogs are the perfect example of how we should all want to be. But Evan, we've been going for a while. I really appreciate you. Whoop,
Yeah, no, I
thank God
think
for
I
sound
talk
editing.
more in this podcast than I normally talk in a day. So I appreciate it. I should be a better listener, but I had a lot to say. So thank you. And thank you for giving me an outlet and appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, stay in touch. I mean, you're man, I love what you're doing. I'm obviously gonna follow your show,
Yeah,
and
keep
just keep
going.
up on that now that I know about it, because I'm real big on that stuff. I like to try to look at everything from all angles if I can, but I tend to lean a certain way sometimes. But it's there's just so much, I want to say, like, misinformation, right? Like you were saying, not like fake news, but Evan, I appreciate you coming on the show. Check his workout, and I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope everybody has a good night.
Yeah, thank you all for listening. And thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate
Thank
it.
you.